The probate courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights. The kind of government furniture that looked like it had been updated since 1987. My sister Cassandra sat 3 rows ahead with her attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Richard Pemberton who'd made his name handling Naval estate disputes. I sat alone at the respondents' table with a court-appointed attorney named Susan Walsh, who'd been assigned to my case 48 hours ago and looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "This should be straightforward," Susan whispered to me. "Your sister has documentation showing she was your grandmother's primary caregiver. You were overseas for most of the last decade. The judge will likely rule in her favor." "Probably," I said quietly. Grandmother Eleanor had died 4 months ago at 90. Her will left everything equally between Cassandra and me, the house in Newport, the investments, the savings accounts, total estate value, approximately $3.2 million. Cassandra was contesting the will. She wanted everything. Judge Harold Morrison presided. Late 60s, stern face, the kind of judge who'd clearly seen every trick in the book and was unimpressed by any of them. He reviewed the case file with the enthusiasm of someone reading a phone book. "Ms. Cassandra Wright versus Ms. Loren Wright," he said, without looking up. "Estate contestation. Ms. Cassandra Wright claims undue influence and seeks to overturn the equal distribution stipulated in Eleanor Wright's will." Pemberton stood. "Your Honor, my client served as her grandmother's primary caregiver for the last 12 years. She managed medications, coordinated medical appointments, handled household affairs, and provided daily companionship while the respondent, Loren Wright, was absent." "Absent how?" Judge Morrison asked. "Living abroad," Pemberton said. "Working overseas. Visiting perhaps twice a year at most. We have testimony from neighbors, healthcare providers, and friends of the deceased, all confirming that Cassandra was the dedicated family member while Loren was notably absent from her grandmother's life." Judge Morrison looked at me. "Ms. Wright, is this accurate?" I stood. "I was overseas frequently, yes." "Doing what?" "Working." "What kind of work requires you to abandon your elderly grandmother for a decade?" "I wouldn't characterize it as abandonment, Your Honor." "How would you characterize it?" His tone suggested he'd already made up his mind. "My grandmother and I maintained a close relationship despite the distance. We spoke regularly. I visited when I could." "Twice a year," Judge Morrison said, reading from the file. "Sometimes. Once?" "1 year, not at all." "That year, I was unable to travel," I said. "Unable or unwilling?" "Unable." "Why?" I hesitated. "Work commitments." Judge Morrison set down the file. "Ms. Wright, I've been doing this for 32 years. I've seen many cases of absent family members who suddenly appear when there's money to inherit. From where I'm sitting, your sister devoted over a decade to caring for your grandmother while you pursued your career overseas. The law recognizes that kind of dedication." Cassandra turned to smile at me. It was the smile she'd perfected in childhood, the one that said she'd won and I'd lost, and there was nothing I could do about it. Susan Walsh stood. "Your Honor, with respect, Eleanor Wright's will was clear. She wanted equal distribution between her granddaughters. She was of sound mind when the will was executed in 2012. Judge Morrison interrupted. 12 years ago, before Miss Cassandra Wright dedicated the prime of her life to caregiving duties. Circumstances change. Wills can be challenged when circumstances change significantly. But the law, Judge Morrison said, allows me to consider the totality of circumstances when determining whether a will reflects the true wishes of the deceased or whether it was executed before significant changes in family dynamics. He looked directly at me. Senora Loren Wright, your case is hopeless. Your sister has substantial evidence of her caregiving role. You have absence. I'm inclined to rule in Miss Cassandra Wright's favor and award her the entirety of the estate, less a token amount of $50,000 for you, which I believe adequately reflects your minimal contribution to your grandmother's welfare. Cassandra actually clapped her hands once, then covered her mouth in mock embarrassment. Pemberton remained professionally neutral, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. Susan Walsh looked defeated. Your Honor, may I request a brief recess to consult with my client? Ms. Walsh, your client had weeks to prepare a defense. A recess won't change the facts. Nevertheless, Your Honor, request denied. Judge Morrison straightened his papers. I'm prepared to rule now unless Ms. Lauren Wright has something substantial to add, and by substantial, I mean evidence beyond phone calls and good intentions. I stood slowly. Your Honor, may I approach? For what purpose? I'd like to speak with you briefly. Just a few words. Judge Morrison sighed. Ms. Wright, this isn't a television show. You don't get dramatic last-minute speeches. Not a speech, I said, a phrase. 2 words. He looked annoyed but curious. You may approach. I walked to the bench. The courtroom was completely silent. Cassandra watched with barely concealed triumph. Susan Walsh looked confused. I leaned close to Judge Morrison and spoke quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. Operation Crimson Tide. Judge Morrison's hand froze on his papers. Excuse me, he said, his voice suddenly different. Operation Crimson Tide, I repeated. Arctic Station. Authorization November 7. The color drained from Judge Morrison's face. He stared at me for a long moment, then stood abruptly. This court is in recess, he said. 30 minutes. Ms. Wright Lauren. Wright, please follow me to my chambers. Immediately. Your Honor. Pemberton stood. What's happening? Recess, Judge Morrison repeated. Do not leave the courthouse. He walked quickly toward his chambers. I followed. Behind me, I heard Cassandra say, what just happened? Judge Morrison's chambers were cramped and lined with law books. He closed the door behind me and turned, his stern judicial demeanor completely gone. Who are you? Asked Lauren. Elizabeth Wright, Lieutenant Commander United States Navy. Intelligence Division. Retired Jesus Christ, he said. He sat down heavily. Crimson Tide. That operation was classified above my clearance level. I only knew the name because I was JAG during the preliminary hearings. How do you know that name? I was there, I said simply, part of the intelligence team that conducted the Arctic surveillance. We identified the listening posts, gathered the evidence. I spent 11 months on a submarine under the ice cap. Judge Morrison put his head in his hands. Why didn't you say something earlier? Because my service record is classified. Because I can't tell people where I was or what I was doing. Because I was on a nuclear submarine gathering intelligence on foreign surveillance stations is on something I can just announce in open court. Your grandmother, sighed slowly. She knew. She was Navy herself, World War II. Worked in communications at Pearl Harbor, she understood operational security better than most active duty officers. That's why you couldn't visit. Some years I was on submarines. Some years I was at listening posts, so remote they don't appear on maps. Some years I was doing things I still can't talk about even though I'm retired. Grandmother understood. She never questioned it. Judge Morrison stood and walked to his window. Your sister has no idea. No one does. My service record is sealed. Even after retirement, I can't disclose most of what I did. Naval intelligence doesn't really do retirement parties. How did your grandmother die? He asked. Heart failure, peacefully, in her sleep. She was 90. She'd lived a full life. And she left everything equally between you and your sister. Yes. Why? I pulled a letter from my jacket pocket. She left this for me, with her attorney, sealed, to be opened only if the will was contested. I handed it to Judge Morrison. He read it carefully. My dearest Lauren, if you're reading this, Cassandra is fighting for the estate. I expected she might. She's always valued money over meaning. Don't let her win by default. She was here, physically. Yes. She brought me groceries and drove me to appointments and managed my medications. But you, my darling girl, you were serving our country, doing the work I did 70 years ago, carrying on a family tradition of service that Cassandra never understood. I never needed daily care. I was healthy until the very end. Cassandra chose to be here because she wanted to secure her inheritance. You chose to serve because that's who you are. The house, the money, it's all divided equally because I loved you both equally. But I respected you more. Tell the truth, if you must. Your service was more important than her care. With all my love, Grandmother, Eleanor. Judge Morrison finished reading and carefully refolded the letter. This is authenticated, signed, dated, witnessed by her attorney. Your sister really had no idea about your service. I told her I worked for the State Department. Told everyone that it's a common cover for intelligence work. She thought I was some mid-level bureaucrat pushing papers in embassies. And you let her think that operational security required it. Judge Morrison walked back to his desk. You understand that even with this information, I can't just rule in your favor. Your sister did provide care. She has documentation. I understand. But I call you and in good conscience award everything to her when you were serving on a nuclear submarine. He paused. I assume you can provide some verification of your service. Beyond operational code names. I pulled out my phone and opened a secure document. This is my DD-214. Discharge papers. They're heavily redacted but show dates of service, rank at retirement, and general duty classification. He studied it, Lieutenant Commander. 12 years active duty, intelligence specialist. Honorable discharge, a look at up. The gaps in the dates, those are the classified assignments. Yes. And you can't talk about them? Most of them? No. Some have been declassified. I can tell you I served on the USS Providence, SS-1719, for 11 months. I can tell you I was stationed at various intelligence facilities. I can tell you I received commendations that I'm not allowed to display publicly. Your grandmother must have been incredibly proud. She was Navy through and through. She understood what the silence cost. Judge Morrison sat quietly for a moment. What do you want from this estate, Lauren? What my grandmother wanted. Equal distribution. I don't want everything. I just don't want to be erased. Your sister is arguing you abandoned your grandmother. My sister is wrong. I made choices. Hard choices. Choices that meant missing birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments. But I called grandmother every week. Every single week. No matter where I was. Sometimes from zones in the middle of the ocean. Sometimes from secure facilities, where I had 15 minutes of approved call time. Sometimes from places I still can't name. She knew where you were. Generally, not specifically. I'd tell her I'm somewhere cold or somewhere that doesn't see much sun. She'd understand. She'd tell me about her week, about Cassandra's visits, about the garden. We'd talk about everything except where I actually was or what I was actually doing. That must have been lonely. Service is often lonely, I said, but it's necessary. Judge Morrison looked at the letter again. Your grandmother says Cassandra was here for the inheritance. Cassandra has always been practical. When grandmother's health was stable, Cassandra lived in Boston, had a marketing job, a boyfriend, a whole life. Then grandmother turned 80 and had a minor heart scare. Cassandra moved back within 2 weeks. That seems caring. It would be, except grandmother's doctor said it was nothing serious. Just old Ahe. Cassandra moved back anyway. Quit her job, told everyone she was dedicating herself to caregiving. And you think it was about the inheritance? I think Cassandra did the math. Grandmother had money, property, investments. Cassandra had credit card debt and career stagnation. Moving back was a long-term investment that paid dividends in free housing and eventual inheritance. That's cynical. That's honest. Judge Morrison sighed. I need to verify some of this. Make some calls. To whom? Navy, JAG, office. They can confirm your service without revealing classified details. He looked at me seriously. This is highly unusual. I've never had an intelligence operative in my courtroom before. Former intelligence operative. Still, this complicates matters. I just want what's fair, I said. Fair is subjective in a state law, Judge Morrison said, but I'll consider all the information. Wait outside. This may take some time. I returned to the courtroom. Cassandra immediately approached. What was that about? She demanded. Procedural matter, I said. Bullshit. You said something to him. He went white. Just clarifying some details. Cassandra's attorney, Pemberton, joined us. Ms. Wright, if you have evidence relevant to this case, you're required to disclose it. I disclosed it to the judge. That's sufficient. That's not how this works. Actually, Susan Walsh interjected, suddenly looking more engaged. In matters of national security, disclosure can be limited to the presiding judge. Standard procedure. Pemberton looked skeptical. National security. What possible relevance? That's between my client and the court, Susan said smoothly. I'd underestimated Susan Walsh. She'd clearly figured out what was happening. Cassandra crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. Lauren's been gone for a decade. She's grasping at straws. We'll see, I said quietly. I was there. Lauren. Every day. Helping grandmother with everything. Where were you? Off playing State Department bureaucrat in some embassy? That's not the same as actual caregiving. I wasn't playing at anything, I said. Please. You always acted like your job was so important, so classified, so special. You were probably filing visa applications and organizing diplomatic receptions. Something like that, I said. Grandmother needed me, not phone calls from someone pretending to be important. She needed real help, and I gave her that. For 12 years, I said. How coincidental that your dedication began the exact year. Grandmother turned 80, and you were drowning in credit card debt. Cassandra's face flushed. How dare you? $37,000 in credit card debt. I said, lost your job in Boston. Boyfriend left you. Moving in with grandmother solved a lot of problems, didn't it? I moved home to help her. You moved home because you had nowhere else to go. Grandmother gave you free housing, covered your expenses, and you're now trying to claim that as caregiving, I did help her. I'm not saying you didn't. I'm saying your motives weren't purely altruistic. Pemberton stepped between us. Ladies, this is neither the time nor place. The clerk appeared. Judge Morrison is ready. We returned to our positions. Judge Morrison entered, his expression unreadable. I've reviewed additional evidence, he said, and I've made some inquiries that have been ... illuminating. Cassandra sat up straighter, confident. Miss Cassandra Wright, your dedication to your grandmother's care is documented and acknowledged. You provided valuable services during her final years. Cassandra smiled. However, Judge Morrison continued, I've learned that Ms. Lauren Wright's absence was not due to career ambition or negligence, but due to classified military service of the highest order. The smile faded. Ms. Lauren Wright served 12 years in the United States Navy, specializing in intelligence operations. Her assignments were classified and required extended periods of absence that were unavoidable and non-negotiable. She maintained contact with her grandmother within the constraints of operational security. Pemberton stood. Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of this, because it's classified, Judge Morrison said sharply, and remains. So, I can confirm that Ms. Lauren Wright's service record has been verified through appropriate channels. She was not, as her sister assumed, pushing papers in embassies. She was serving her country in capacities that required significant personal sacrifice. Cassandra looked stunned. Lauren was in the military. Navy, Judge Morrison said. Intelligence Division. Her service required prolonged absences, often with limited or no communication capability. Under those circumstances, her reduced visitation was not abandonment but operational necessity. I don't believe this, Cassandra said. Your belief is irrelevant, Judge Morrison said. I have verification from Naval JAG. The facts are clear. He looked at both of us. Eleanor Wright's will specify equal distribution between her granddaughters. After reviewing all evidence, including testimony about caregiving and documentation of military service, I find no grounds to overturn that will. Your Honor, Pemberton stood. My client provided over a decade of care for which she received free housing, financial support, and eventual inheritance. Judge Morrison interrupted. Ms. Cassandra Wright was not acting purely out of family devotion. She was unemployed and financially struggling when she moved in with her grandmother. This court recognizes that her care was valuable, but it was also mutually beneficial. Cassandra's face was red now. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I have a letter from the deceased, written shortly before her death and authenticated by her attorney, explicitly stating her wishes for equal distribution and acknowledging Ms. Lauren Wright's military service. He held up grandmother's letter. Eleanor Wright was clear. She valued both granddaughters. She appreciated Ms. Cassandra's physical presence and Ms. Lauren's service to the country. She wanted equal distribution. And that's what she get. Your Honor, Pemberton tried again. My ruling stands, Judge Morrison said firmly. The estate of Eleanor Wright will be distributed equally between Cassandra Wright and Lauren Wright as stipulated in the original will. Each granddaughter receives 50% of all assets, accounts, and property. He banged his gavel. This case is closed. Cassandra stood, shaking. This isn't fair. I was there. I did everything. You were there, Judge Morrison acknowledged. And you'll receive half of a very substantial estate. That seems more than fair, given that you also received 12 years of free housing and financial support. Lauren was off playing soldier. Lieutenant Commander Wright was serving her country. Judge Morrison corrected sharply. Show some respect. Cassandra looked at me like she'd never seen me before. You were actually in the Navy? Yes. For 12 years. Yes. Doing what? I can't tell you. That's convenient. That's classified. Pemberton gathered his papers. We could appeal. Don't, I said. Take the 50%, Cassandra. It's generous considering the circumstances. Generous is mine. Primera IARN. You earned half, I said. Just like me. You weren't even here. I was serving on a submarine under the Arctic ice cap, I said quietly. I was tracking foreign surveillance networks. I was doing things that kept this country safe. Things I still can't talk about. Things that meant missing grandmother's 80th birthday, her 85th, things that meant spending Christmases in bunks and Thanksgivings eating prepackaged meals in facilities that do UNT officially exist. Cassandra stared at me. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to. That's what classified means. Why didn't you tell me? Operational security. The fewer people who knew, the safer everyone was. Grandmother understood. She was Navy herself. She never mentioned it. Because she was Navy herself, I repeated, she understood operational security better than most active officers. She never asked where I was. Never pressed for details. Just told me to stay safe and call when I could. Cassandra sat down heavily. 12 years. 12 years. And you never told anyone. I told grandmother. Generally, not specifically. And now I've told you, also, generally. Pemberton looked uncomfortable. Ms. Wright, Cassandra, I think we should accept the ruling. I thought we were winning, Cassandra said numbly. We were, until your sister invoked national security protocols I didn't even know existed in probate court. Susan Walsh smiled slightly. They're rare, but they exist. Judge Morrison stood. Ladies, I suggest you work with the estate attorney to divide the assets amicably. Your family, act like it. He left the courtroom. Cassandra and I stood in silence for a moment. I really thought you were just some low-level State Department employee, Cassandra finally said. I know. Why let me think that? Because it was easier than explaining the truth, and because the cover story kept people from asking questions. Grandmother must have been so proud. She was. And lonely. I nodded. She was that too. She wrote about it, in letters I wasn't allowed to receive until after her death. Letters. I pulled out a small stack from my bag. She wrote me every month. Her attorney kept them sealed until her death. then delivered them all at once. 12 years of letters, 144 in total. What do they say? That she missed me. That she understood why I was gone. That she was proud of my service. That she appreciated your presence even though she knew your motives weren't entirely pure. Cassandra winced. She knew grandmother was 93. Not stupid. She knew you moved home because you needed a place to stay, but she also knew you provided real help once you were there. She valued both things. Did she love you more? Cassandra asked quietly. No. But she respected my choices more. There's a difference. We walked out of the courthouse together. The Newport afternoon was cool and overcast. The house, Cassandra said. Do you want it? No. You've been living there. Keep it. I'll take my share of the investments and savings. That's more than fair. I'm not trying to punish you, Cassandra. I just wanted what grandmother intended. Equal distribution. Equal distribution. I confirmed. We stood on the courthouse steps. After a long moment, Cassandra said, I'm sorry. For assuming, for thinking you'd abandoned her, for calling you selfish and absent. You didn't know. I should have asked. Should have wondered why someone would choose to be away from family for so long. Should have realized there might be reasons beyond ambition or neglect. Most people don't assume military service, I said, especially from women. Especially in intelligence. It's an easy assumption to miss. What do you do now? Now that you're retired, consulting. Security analysis, risk assessment, nothing classified anymore. Do you miss it? I thought about it. I miss the purpose, the clarity, knowing that what I did mattered, even if no one could know about it. But I don't miss the submarines, or the isolation, or missing 12 years of grandmother's life. She wrote you a letter every month for 12 years. She did. Can I read them? I hesitated, then said, some of them. The ones that talk about you. About our family. The ones that aren't too personal. I'd like that. Then I'll share them. We walked to our cars. Before we parted, Cassandra turned back. Lauren, yeah, thank you for your service. She said it awkwardly, like she wasn't quite sure how. But she meant it. You're welcome, I said. 3 months later, I stood in grandmother's house, now Cassandra's house, looking through old photo albums. Cassandra had invited me for lunch, and we'd spent the afternoon going through grandmother's things. Look at this, Cassandra said, holding up a black and white photo. Grandmother at Pearl Harbor. She must have been, what, 20, 21, I said. She worked in the communications center. Decoded messages. Tracked ship movements. The boring but essential work that kept the Pacific Fleet operational. She never talked about it. Much. She couldn't. Even after the war, she'd signed secrecy agreements that never expired. Just like you. Just like me. Cassandra set down the photo album. I've been reading her letters. The ones you shared? She wrote about you constantly. Wondering where you were. Hoping you were safe. She worried about you every single day. I know. But she was also so proud. She'd write things like, my Lauren is doing important work. Primera. Keine viel. Italiano. She's carrying on the family tradition. She knew, somehow, even without details. Navy people recognize Navy people, I said, even across generations. I feel like I missed out, Cassandra said. I was here physically, but I missed the real connection. The understanding you and grandmother shared. You had your own connection with her. It wasn't the same. It didn't need to be, I said. Grandmother loved us both. She needed us both. You gave her daily companionship. I gave her pride in family service. Both mattered. The estate settlement finalized, Cassandra said. You got your half of the investments and savings. I got the house and furnishings. We both got what grandmother wanted, and what she deserved to have honored, I added. Cassandra pulled out an envelope. I found something else, in grandmother's desk. It's addressed to both of us. She handed it to me. The envelope was sealed, labeled for my granddaughters, after the fighting stops. I opened it carefully. Inside was one more letter. My darling girl. If you're reading this together, you've resolved the inheritance dispute. I'm glad. I hated knowing you'd fight over my estate, but I understood it was inevitable. Cassandra, you provided comfort in my final years. Lauren, you provided purpose by carrying on our family's tradition of service. I needed you both. The house, the money, these are just things. What matters is that you're sisters, that you come from a family of strong women who serve in different ways, that you understand sacrifice comes in many forms. Cassandra, your sister gave up years of her life to keep people safe, people who will never know her name or thank her for her service. That's real sacrifice. Lauren, your sister gave up her own dreams and ambitions to make sure an old woman wasn't alone. That's also real sacrifice. You've both given more than you should have had to give. I'm sorry I couldn't make things easier for either of you, but I'm proud of the women you've become. Love each other. Support each other. Remember that family isn't just blood, it's the choice to stay connected, even when it's hard. All my love. Always. Grandmother Eleanor. Cassandra was crying. So was I. She really did love us equally, Cassandra said. She did. I'm sorry I tried to take everything. I'm sorry I let you think I'd abandoned her. We sat together in Grandmother's living room, Cassandra's living room, now surrounded by the detritus of a life well lived. Photos and books and trinkets collected over 9 decades. What do you think she'd want us to do now? Cassandra asked. Stay connected, I said. Support each other. Be sisters instead of adversaries. Can we do that? We can try. Cassandra smiled. She'd like that. She would. Outside, the Newport evening was settling in. The house grandmother had loved, the house she'd fought to keep, the house that had caused so much conflict, sat peaceful and warm. Inside, 2 sisters who'd almost lost each other sat together, reading letters from a woman who'd understood sacrifice in all its forms. A woman who'd served her country in wartime. A woman who'd raised a family in peacetime. A woman who'd loved 2 very different granddaughters equally, even when they couldn't understand each other. Grandmother Eleanor would have been proud to see us there together, finally understanding what she'd known all along. That service takes many forms. Sacrifice comes at many costs, and family is worth fighting for even when the fight is with each other. Same time next month? Cassandra asked, as I prepared to leave. Same time next month, I agreed, and for the first time in 12 years, I felt like I'd finally come home. Not to a house or a city or even a family estate, but to something more important. An understanding that despite our different paths, different choices, different sacrifices, my sister and I were bound by something stronger than inheritance. We were bound by a grandmother who'd understood us both, both, and trusted us to eventually find our way back to each other, even if it took a probate court, a naval code phrase, and 144 unsent letters to make it happen.